Good evening, I'm Dan Jennings, and this is your Blue Wave Report for March 12, 2019. House Democrats on Tuesday introduced legislation that would provide a pathway to citizenship for more than 1 million undocumented immigrants in the United States. Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Representative Lucille Roybal Allard, and other House Democrats are unveiling the Dream and Promise Act. This act would protect undocumented immigrants who came to the United States as children, sometimes referred to as dreamers, and immigrants with temporary protected status or deferred enforced departure. The bill would grant dreamers with conditional permanent resident status for 10 years and cancel removal proceedings if requirements are met. The criteria is similar to what DACA recipients have to meet, including graduating from high school or obtaining a GED. The measure allows those who qualify to gain lawful permanent residential status, which is usually out of the question for many undocumented immigrants who came to the United States as minors. To obtain legal status, immigrants must have a qualifying petitioner, for example, a family member or an employer, who can sponsor them. However, even in that case, he or she is already hindered by the fact that they came in illegally. TPS holders would also be given the opportunity to gain lawful permanent resident status and have their removal proceedings canceled under the new bill. In addition to addressing current TPS holders, the measure would amend the law to require that the Department of Homeland Security Secretary provides an explanation for terminating a TPS designation, as well as a report shortly after publishing a notice of said termination. This report must explain the original designation and any progress made by a country to resolve the issues leading to TPS designation according to the fact sheets on the measure. The Secretary also has to describe the qualitative and quantitative methods used to assess whether or not country conditions have improved. This would include addressing any challenges or shortcomings related to the initial designation. Jeff Stein of the Washington Post today reports that Puerto Rican officials have told him via text message that as of today, they have already cut food stamp benefits for more than 670,000 Puerto Rican residents following opposition to emergency funding from the Trump administration. House Democrats passed a $600 million bill to keep Puerto Rican food stamps running back in January. However, there has yet to be a timetable set for the Senate vote, and Congress goes on recess next week. If this issue is not resolved this week, Puerto Rican officials say all 1.3 million beneficiaries of the program are likely to see benefit cuts. 1.3 million people going hungry. Unbelievable. Baltimore City is about to join 75 local jurisdictions nationally, 11 states, and the District of Columbia in prohibiting discrimination based on where one's rental payments come from, but only to a certain point. A bill that would make it illegal for landlords in Baltimore to discriminate against prospective tenants based on the funds they use to pay rent, such as government housing vouchers, won preliminary approval Monday from the City Council. But it has one key amendment. Under the change, there would be an exemption for landlords with more than 5 contiguous dwellings. Such landlords would have to rent only 20% or 1 out of every 5 of their units to people with these vouchers. The amendment would expire after 4 years unless the council conducts a study and finds that it should be kept in place. Baltimore demand they do so. Councilman Ryan Dorsey, the bill's sponsor, said that the amendment would allow discrimination in housing to continue, but he was happy for the overall passage of the bill, which he said was necessary because some landlords do discriminate. It's clear that housing vouchers are concentrated in certain parts of the city and absent in other parts of the city, and that's due to a very conscious and matter-of-fact decision on the parts of the landlords, according to the councilman. Laws like this work, he goes on to say, to help voucher recipients find housing they deserve, and it's our job as the government to protect the interests of equity and access to housing opportunities. Antonio Fasanelli, the executive director of the Homeless Persons Representation Project, agrees that 75 local jurisdictions, 11 states, and the District of Columbia prohibit such discrimination. However, for many of her organization's clients in Baltimore, voucher discrimination makes it very difficult for them to move out of homelessness and into stable housing. Some landlords simply say, "Oh no, we don't take that kind of money," while others steer tenants with vouchers to certain rental properties while denying them access to others. That kind of steering just speaks to the kind of housing discrimination we have seen in Baltimore, Ms. Fasanelli said, and serves as a pretext for discrimination based upon race or disability. The New York State Attorney General's office on Monday, according to the New York Times, issued subpoenas for 2 banks for records relating to the funding of several Trump Organization projects. The inquiry is a civil investigation at this point and not a criminal probe, according to the Times, adding that its scope and focus were unclear. Investigators requested financial records from the German lender Deutsche Bank related to the Trump International Hotel in Washington, the Trump National Doral Golf Course outside Miami, the Trump International Hotel and Tower in Chicago, and an unsuccessful effort to buy the NFL Buffalo Bills, the Times reported. Boy, the irony if the NFL brings him down twice. Investors Bank, based in New Jersey, was also subpoenaed for records relating to the Trump Park Avenue project in Manhattan, according to the New York Times. And the strongest indication that former Vice President Joe Biden will run for president occurred today as he teased a possible 2020 run Tuesday morning after taking the stage at a firefighters conference. "I appreciate the energy you showed when I got up here. Save it a little longer. I may need it in a few weeks," Biden said to applause at the International Association of Firefighters' annual legislative conference. "Be careful what you wish for." Now, I know a lot of people don't like Biden, but he's got experience that we're going to need on the world stage recovering from Trump, so don't just write him off. In a vote last Friday approving the bill, H.R. 1 won support from all 234 House Democrats who voted, while every voting House Republican opposed it. That stark polarity underscores the extent to which access to the ballot box has grown into one of the most systemic conflicts between the two parties. For both parties, the collision over H.R. 1 provides a revealing window into their broader direction. The increased emphasis on voter security and creating obstacles to voting in Republican-leaning states paralleled the party's broader strategic choice after the 2012 presidential election. Rather than seeking to expand its support among minority voters, as the now famous Republican National Committee autopsy report recommended following Mitt Romney's defeat, the GOP turned towards more of a, racist message aimed at maximizing its support among whites uneasy about social change, a shift symbolized by Trump's nomination and general election victory in 2016. In a mirror image, the striking Democratic unanimity over H.R. 1 underscores that all elements of the party now recognize how much their future depends upon mobilizing the increasingly diverse population of younger Americans, especially as so many older Fox News viewing whites are drawn to Trump's confrontational message of racial nationalism. And finally this evening, the budget. In its proposal, the White House is calling for a cut to the overall level of defense spending by 5% next year, below the current federal spending caps, which would be a nearly $30 billion reduction. However, it would also increase military spending by 5% to $750 billion, up from $716. The Trump administration, in another attempt to get around Congress, is using a war contingency fund as a maneuver to get around the defense budget limit, which lawmakers have already derided as a budget gimmick. Though the plan comes with a built-in deficit of more than $22 trillion, boy, that buys a lot of health care. Trump administration officials described it as a return to fiscal sanity that won't hinder economic growth. Don't you believe it? Yesterday, we told you of the over $2.2 trillion in cuts to Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security in the budget, but that is only the beginning. This budget also foists massive cuts to other programs that we, the people, depend upon on a daily basis. It includes a $220 billion cut to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program known as SNAP, also commonly referred to as food stamps. These cuts would be phased in over 10 years and also include mandatory work requirements, because we all know food stamp recipients are lazy. The program currently serves around 45 million people. It also includes a $21 billion cut to temporary assistance for needy families, an already severely underfunded cash assistance program for the nation's poorest people. And the DeVos measure, $207 billion in cuts to the student loan program, eliminating the public service loan forgiveness program, and cutting to subsidize student loans. There is also a 9% cut to non-defense programs, which would hit Section 8 housing vouchers, hello Baltimore, public housing programs, Head Start, the Women, Infants, and Children's Nutrition Program known as WIC, and low-income home energy assistance program, HEAP, amongst others. So balancing it on the kids and the elderly. Nice. While this budget is dead on arrival in the House, it just shows where this administration's priorities are. The wealthy, the corporations, and the military-industrial complex. It is most certainly not with we, the people. I cannot stress enough how important every election matters, whether a school board or for President of the United States, and there are numerous elections across the country this year. You can find more information at equalvotelocal.com. Just click on the Blue Wave Database button to find your state's electoral calendar. Thank you to the Baltimore Sun, the CNN, and the New York Times for information used in tonight's report. For the Blue Wave Report, I'm Dan Jennings, reminding you as always.
Don't just comment at subscribe. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.